All right, welcome to Chapter 4's homework. We're going to go over a couple of the problems from the homework, and we only do a couple of problems because I want to make sure that you can get in there and do some on your own as well, and make sure that you are understanding how to do what's required of you for this class. And if you struggle a little bit, that's normal. If you struggle for a long time, make sure to email me and I can give you a hand. All right, so let's jump in with number 1. The other purpose of doing this homework and helping you out is also to show you some different stylizing when you're typing in your queries, as well as I want to show you how I build queries. Now, you can build queries many different ways. That's fine, and a lot of people do. This is just the way I tend to do it. I tend to build in pieces, and that makes me feel like I'm progressing rather than just kind of putting it all out there and then seeing if it works. So, with that being said, let's take a look at number 1 and kind of do it the way I do it. So it says, list the last name of each guy that does not live in Massachusetts. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, by the way, this time I'm going to use the method of all caps. And this is a common style that you'll see more often than not. DBAs love this style. And so did the common user. So we want to, everything's pretty much capitalized, straight up. So select star from now, you're already saying, but I thought we don't use select star. We're going to use select star because we are on a limited database. Typically, when you're building queries, you're not working on a production box. You're building off of a dev box or a QA box. Even QA boxes start to get a little hairy. So oftentimes you're working on dev boxes or your local sandbox. The data is a lot smaller. And if you were to run away, you're not bringing production servers down. For us, we're just using select star to make sure we're even in the right ballpark. We know that we need the last name of each guide, so I'm pretty sure it's going to be the guides table. So we're going to run that. By the way, these first two little hyphens means comment, and so the run is ignoring that piece and going straight to this query. So right away, we have what we're looking for, which is the last name of the guide and the state that they're in. So with that, we know that we can say last name. Now remember, when you're working on these things, you want to return just what's required. If you give back more than what's required, you'll lose some points because that's how it works in the real world. You want to return what the requirements have asked for, nothing more, nothing less. And so with that being said, even though I only need the last name, at first I'm going to add the column state because I want to make sure that my data that's coming back is what I'm looking for. And then afterwards, I'll remove that state. Now, let's always remember to put our semicolon at the end, because not having semicolon, you can lose points for that, because it is imperative that we have that semicolon. When we're running these single queries like this, it doesn't matter per se, but it's a good thing to do to get in a good habit. So that way, when you are developing bigger, larger queries, when you have multiple queries, let's say in a store procedure or something like that, you already are used to having semicolons and you're not going to run into trouble. All right, so select these things from guide. It definitely is what we're looking for. And then it's saying that does not live in Massachusetts. For me, I tend to want to pull the data that it's asking for first. Let's actually see the data that we're not supposed to be seeing. So here we go. Oh, no data found. I kind of did this on purpose. One of the things to understand is, in fact, let's highlight this first part of the query. By highlighting something in this query and then hitting run, it only runs what you've highlighted. So right now it's ignoring this last part. And we know that there's a record with MA in it right now. So what's going on? This is going to be something that gets you. I'm just telling you that now. It's going to catch you. When you're using the equal sign in regards to string like state is, you have to have the correct casing. So lowercase ma is not going to pick up that. but uppercase MA definitely does. And there you go. Here's our 3 rows. So now that I have the data that I don't want to have, I know that I can reverse this and make it have the data I do want to have. The easiest way to do that is the word not. Not reverses my where clause, whatever's in the where clause. So let's go ahead and run that. Sure enough, there you go. 7 rows. Now, while that's definitely neat and handy, there is one additional way to do it. In fact, there's plenty of ways to do it, but one additional way to do it that makes the most sense. And oftentimes, when you are seeing queries coming from a database developer, DBA, they tend to like doing it this way much better. It's just kind of a style thing because either way will work. In fact, if we hit run, we'll see that we have 7 rows still. So one last thing, and don't forget this. You're going to forget it. I'm telling you now, you're going to forget it. Don't forget it. Make sure at the end you read what's asked of you. List the last name of each guy that does not live in Massachusetts. Make sure that you reread it and you check your query that it's giving exactly what's being asked of you. There you go. That is the query. All right, on to the next one. Number 4. List the trip name of each trip that has the type hiking and that has a distance longer than 10 miles. On this one, I'm going to use the style that I typically use, which is kind of mixed case. And I'm also going to, instead of having a separate line for everything, I'm going to group pieces together. And this is the trip. So let's take a look first at the trip field and see if that works out for us. Well, we need the trip name, and we need to know what type it is. We do know that, and the distance. So all 3 fields or columns are in this table. We don't need to look anywhere else. So I can come up here and just say trip name, type, and state. Oh, sorry, nope, not state. Distance. Now, right away, you might notice, okay, why is type the same color as the select in the from? And that's because Oracle uses the word type as a reserved keyword. In fact, select and from are also reserved keywords. And that's okay. You can use that as part of the column names. And in fact, if we hit run, it's going to work fine. So here's our trip name, our type, and our distance. We can, if at some point the system is giving us hassle because we're using a keyword, we can put something in quotes to help signify that it's actually a column name. There is a caveat to that. And as you'll see here, the type is different than the casing here type. When you put something in quotes, it has to be the same casing. So right away, I'm going to get an error. So make sure, if you're going to do that, that you have the same casing. And that's why it works there. So back to the way I had it. In this case, it's not going to give me a hassle because it figured out that I was talking about a column name. And here's a good example also of how I've renamed the column names from the way they are in the table. Distance actually comes before type. And so I've reordered the columns. Now, let's go ahead, and we know that the first part is that they want the type of hiking. So if I say type equals hiking, just remember, I have to make sure I use the same casing as the word hiking. Let's go ahead and run that. And here I made a very common mistake. Again, it's nice to see these common mistakes so that way you're aware of them. When we're doing a type equals, we don't want to use double quotes. We want to use single quotes. So let's try that. There we go. But now we also have all these different distances. And we want to make sure that it is longer than 10 miles. Now, it's interesting as I'm looking here and I don't see any one with longer than 10 miles. And that's because we have only 10 rows showing, and you can see it says more than 10 rows available, increase row selector to view size. So let's go ahead and just make sure we have that number up. Let's run it again. And there we go. And we'll see actually that this Crawford Path presidential hike is longer than 10 miles. So we definitely want to make sure we see that row, right? Now, how do we do that? We're going to go ahead and we're going to add another piece to this where clause. Is it an and or is it an or? In this case, we want to make sure we're using and, because it needs to be true on both sides. It needs to be true on hiking and true on greater than 10. So there we go. Greater than 10. You notice because it's a number, I don't use the single quotes around it. And there we go. That's our one row. And I happen to know, because I looked through all the data, and I've already verified that it only had one row. All right. Now, let's talk a moment. We've got number 5 coming up. We're not going to do all of 5. We're just going to do an honorable mention on 5. Because this one says using the N operator in your command. So this is where I'm going to give you a little bit of a hint. And remember, we talked about when we use the N keyword, we can make series, and the series have to be in parentheses. So we want to make sure we say New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. And remember, the N essentially puts an or between all these. So in New Jersey, or in New York, or in PA. Always remember, you have to put the single quotes around the text. And just in case this is the end of the query, you'd want to put a semicolon. So that's kind of how that end looks like. But I'll let you tackle that on your own. Let's jump into number 7. How many trips are in the state of Maine or Massachusetts? So we're going to go with the fact that it's saying how many trips. Let's see if we're in the right ballpark here. And that is select star from trip. So we have trips, yeah, and are in the states of Maine and Massachusetts. And we definitely have the states in this column. So let's go ahead and say select star from where state equals Maine. And again, we want to do or state equals Massachusetts. And there we can scroll through the data and see we only get MEs and MAs. Now, while this works, anyone looking at this code would go, what are you doing? So we're going to do this the right way. We're going to say we're state N ME MA. And it works the same. It just looks cleaner. That's all. And remember, because there's an or implied in the end statement, that's why it works. Now, here's the thing. We don't care to know the data. We just want to count, because remember, it says how many trips. So the easy way to do that is to add the count notation. Let's run that. 16 rows. We could have counted up that before. In fact, we just go ahead and let's undo that for a moment. Make sure we run it again. After we come all the way down here, we can see, 16 rows. So that is exactly what we were looking for. Hit that, run, there we go. One last thing, you could also count the state column in here, and you would have gotten the same number back. It depends on you, the organization you're with, on how you would format this. There's plenty of people that says, well, the fact that you're actually concerned about the state is why you would put state. Some might say, well, actually, I care about how many trips, so I'm going to go with trip name and count on the trip names. Again, it all is going to turn out the same, so it doesn't really matter. And probably the most common you're going to see is select count star. Sorry. There you go. So that is that. Next up, we're going to do number 9. All right, how many reservations include a trip price that is greater than $20 but less than $75? So let's do it this way. We're going to say select star from reservations. Let's run that and see what we get. Oh, because it's not plural. There we go. And we know that chip price is right here, so that's what we're looking for. And it says greater than 20 but less than 75. So we could say right? Well, let's run it. Now you might be tempted here to go, yeah, I got it. Let's put the count around this select and be done with it. The problem is we said greater than 20 and less than 75. That actually means it's not inclusive, as in we don't want prices that are $20 or 75. We want things that are greater than 20 and less than 75. So right here, this row shouldn't be in our data because it's not greater than 20, it's equal to 20. And we didn't see the word inclusive. Now, if we had seen something like trip price that is greater than 20 but less than 75 inclusive, then we would want to include 20 and 75. But since we don't see that word, or we don't see greater than or equal to 20 but less than or equal to 75, this is not inclusive. So we need to be exclusive about it. And remember, between is always inclusive. It always includes our numbers. So now someone smart could go, well, then let's make this 71 and this 74. And that would work for our query because we have nothing but whole numbers. But that's really dangerous, and it really can become problematic if down the road all of a sudden people started putting in $20.50, which is technically greater than 20, but would not be found in this query. The point of all this is because it's not inclusive, we should just avoid inclusive statements. So in this case, we should say where trip price is greater than 20 and trip price is less than 75. By the way, just before I run this query, the old query had 18 rows. Let's run the new query. The new query, it's only got 13 rows. And if you look through, you're not going to see any of the 20s. But now if someone came along and put in something that's trip price of 20.001, which, is like gas prices a hair over 20, it would fall in this query because it's greater than 20. So there you go. So that's why you want to make sure to match your requirements. And in this case, because we would now finalize by reading the statement one more time, how many reservations? Oh yeah, that's right. We want to know the count. We've already done the count, kind of, because we can look at it says 13 rows. Let's go ahead and run that. 13 rows. Again, because it's very specific about included trip price, oftentimes we'll do this. So that way we're also showing that we're really counting the trip price column. We're counting how many times in this column. Either way would be fine, and I would give full points for either way, but just wanted to show you that's how it goes. So that is the homework helper for this week. I hope that helps. Again, spend a little bit of time on something, struggling with it. If you're struggling with it, a little bit of time, make sure you try through it. If at some point, man, you've been on this for a couple of hours and it's just not coming to you, make sure you reach out to me and then I can help you out. All right. Hope that helps. Thanks.